The Bush administration's biofuels initiative to reduce foreign oil dependence calls for the development of advanced technologies for producing ethanol that is both practical and competitive by 2012. Tell us, in your opinion, just how viable an alternative ethanol, corn-based ethanol, is.
Corn, in my opinion, should not be used to propel automobiles because it's a human food, or animal food at best. But to convert any other biomass, whether it's agricultural waste products, whether it is spent oil that goes into biodiesel, or whether anything fermentable, which means starch, is converted into alcohol, ethyl alcohol, and then admixed to gasoline, that is a very good idea. It's a very romantic idea, and whether it will derail eventually, I don't know. The plan that they call it the 25-25 plan, that by the year 2025, 25% of our automotive fuel is substituted by alcohol. Whether we reach that, I don't know.
Now, you've referred to corn, though, as a prima donna of plants. How so?
Prima donna means corn requires A, good soil, lots of irrigation, insecticides, herbicides, and nutrients. Whereas other fermentable materials, such as switchgrass or trees, small diameter trees that can grow very rapidly, can be cut down and fermented, or any other wood byproducts would be more ideal because we don't eat the stuff, and it has to be gotten rid of anyways. And if we make a useful product out of that, that's fine. I agree with it.
Governor Rendell has just contributed in the way of loans and grants more than $17 million to help fund a $250 million ethanol plant that will be based in Clearfield, Pennsylvania, the first of its kind. It will, in addition to producing corn-based ethanol, it does have the cellulosic ethanol pilot project, which would be using the switchgrass and the other products you were talking about. Is that, in your opinion, a good investment of state funds?
It's a good investment. It's an attempt to sponsor technology, because we are going to go further down the road of fermenting other stuff. And practically every governor has bought into this idea, which is a federal idea, a Bush administration idea. And the point is that taxpayers will have to subsidize it. So the $17 million you pointed out is going to be given by taxpayers. And the developers, of course, will make a bundle. The corn growers will make a bundle, unless we switch to other fermentable material, especially the cellulosic ones, which means wood. Cellulose is just another form of sugar, a very complicated form of sugar that can be degraded into sugar and then fermented by yeast into alcohol. And I'm all for it. For a community, it might be a godsend, but all kinds of interests and people and local politicians have to get into the act. They tried this in Franklin County, in Lancaster County, and the community there didn't like it because this is heavy industry.
But part of your argument against the corn-based ethanol is that it could result, and you think most likely will result, in higher corn, meat, and milk prices.
That is an economic fallout of it. It just stands to reason. As there is more demand on corn for fuel, it will be taken away from the feed industry and from the human food industry. The price will go up because the demand is still there and will even go up. And that will drive the prices up, and the price will be passed on to the meat consumers and milk consumers because their animals consume a lot of corn. It even has a humanitarian impact, which doesn't have a price tag on it. Many people in the world who get food aid from us, which are corn shipments to a large extent, will suddenly not get it anymore. Or people who pay for it, Red Cross, let's say, they can't afford it anymore. And then we get a further outcry from anti-American sentiments in the world that, hey, you guys put all this good food that are calories for humans into your cars to drive a little bit faster and further.
Despite what you're saying, though, people around the country are gung-ho for corn-based ethanol. According to estimates, that 5 billion gallons of ethanol will be produced this year at about 100 conversion installations in the U.S. And according to Farm Industry News, 50 more facilities are currently under construction.
That is right. But if you look at the slice of where our energy comes from, this is all the energy. The fermented material, the biomass, is only a tiny little sliver. And it is some sort of a romantic notion to think that in a few years we can duplicate what 400 million years have been accomplished by the creation of petroleum. Petroleum is still our major input, and other inputs should not be neglected, and that is wind power, maybe tidal power, maybe solar energy, maybe the photovoltaic cell, and there may be several other, the hydrogen car.
Well, for years the argument against corn-based ethanol was that it required too much energy to produce. But recent research seems to indicate that it actually delivers 25% more energy than is required to make it. Doesn't that bode well for its future?
No, because many people argue against it. A man named Patzak, a man at Cornell, David Pimentel, a very recognized people, a little bit in the environmental side. They look at the total picture of it all, and they point out that once a local plant has been installed, there will be tremendous hardships on the water supply, because tremendous amounts of water are required for 1 gallon of fuel. Directly in the plant, only 3 or 4 times as much, but in the growing of corn, we need a lot of water. And the hydrologists tell us that the water table, the aquifers, are being depleted at a rapid rate already by normal agricultural crops. And all of a sudden we want to turn on the corn production in our fields. It will cost all the inputs I've mentioned before, which are petrochemicals also, the insecticides, the pesticides, the nutrients, and they also have to be produced. There is a local element that comes in finally when people finally see that a plant is constructed. Okay, there are 400 new places of employment, but all of a sudden the water is more expensive in the area. There are going to be effluent problems, and I'm only speaking for the local interest right now. Overall, I'm in favor of the new technology, but it has to be thought through locally as well as nationally.
Well, would it be safe to say that corn-based ethanol is the best, most viable alternative at the moment, given our interest in reducing our dependence on foreign oil?
As long as corn prices can be stabilized, as long as our food dollar stretches as long as it does now, I'm in favor of it. But eventually there will be an escalation of prices, there will be an anti-American attitude, and we should not forget the utilization of other materials and leave corn alone.
All right, thanks so much for talking with us.
Thank you.
A copy of the program you've just seen can be purchased through Penn State Media Sales at mediasales.psu.edu or by calling 800-770-2111.